I am very, very pleased to welcome Jessica Valenti to our segment here. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
And I want you all to know that Jessica has a new book out. It came out October 1st. It's called Abortion, Our Bodies, Their Lies, and the Truths We Use to Win. Talk about your book, Jessica, please.
Sure. Well, the book really came out of the newsletter after spending 2+ years writing about abortion every day. There was just so much happening. The attacks are so completely unrelenting. I wanted to publish something that provided a little bit of order to the chaos. And it was really important to me that I published something, obviously, before the election. I wanted something to go to readers that made them feel like they were armed and ready to go out and evangelize on abortion, to do something about this issue. I hear from people every day, women especially, that they care so much about abortion. They are so angry. They are so upset, but they don't always know what to do. They don't always feel confident in how to talk about the issue. And so I really wanted to give them a little bit of help with that.
Actually, I just got your most recent newsletter 3 minutes ago. It just popped up in my mailbox. How fortuitous that it's here right now. And this newest edition of the newsletter is, yes, I'm a single issue voter. On this radio broadcast, we played the soundbite from the man who would be the next senator from Ohio, Bernie Moreno, who talked about women, those single issue voters, about abortion. And frankly, why do women over 50 even care? Why do they care about this kind of thing? And I found the fact that A, that he thinks that, and B, that he would say that in public to be staggering, to be, just staggering. He's like the poster child for white men who don't get it.
I do think that's why they're going to lose. And that's what I wrote in this column. They keep talking about, women, especially young women, as single issue voters. They're tossing around that phrase as if it's some sort of slur, as if that single issue was not our humanity, was not our lives, right? That is what we are talking about. And I think it was easier for them before Roe was overturned to sort of make comments like that and call abortion a single issue, or call women who care about abortion single issue voters. But we're living in a country now where people are regularly seeing miscarrying women turned away from hospital emergency rooms, where children are being forced to give birth. I don't think anyone would think that is a single issue anymore. And this sort of sneering disdain that they have for the people who care about this, it's not going over well. It is not going over well at all. And I really do think that is what is going to be driving a lot of people at the voting booths.
I think so, too. With all the, crazy talk and, Arnold Palmer's penis and sharks and battery boats, the idea that women, particularly of a younger generation, are still motivated by this issue. I kind of think Republicans are not talking about it on purpose, because before the midterms, we had sound bites from Republicans saying, well, yes, women were upset when the Dobbs decision came down, but that was months ago. Everyone's moved on. No one cares anymore. And I think that they got a big surprise in the midterms. As you know, there are 10 states that have abortion measures on the ballot in November. And, I'd like your perspective on this, because I was at the tail end of the Vietnam generation. I mean, when we were in high school, it was, you'd ask a friend of yours, what's your number? What's your number? Is this your year for the lottery? What's your number? And it was happening to us, because teenagers tend to be that way, or it's the most important things are the things that are happening to them. And so there were these huge protests. There were these protests on college campuses. It was something that was happening to us. And so we became politically active. But in the intervening years, I don't think there's been the equivalent of Vietnam until now, until Dobbs. Now something terrible has happened that affects them and their day-to-day lives. And I think it's going to be a huge motivating factor, particularly in the younger demographic, which I can tell you, sadly, from watching election after election, younger voters tend to be the smallest turnouts. I think that's going to change. What do you see?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the polling of younger voters, younger women under 45, women under 35, abortion is their number one issue, right? It's above the economy for them because they understand that this is linked to the economy, obviously. And so I think that there is just a tremendous, tremendous amount of anger and upset and motivation to get out and do something. They can see, as you said, they can see every day what the consequences of these bans are. And there's not going to be a person in this country soon who hasn't been impacted by one of these laws.
Yeah, I saw a post. I'm not on TikTok, but every once in a while a TikTok somehow shows up in Instagram. And it was, it was an evangelical young woman, blonde, blue-eyed, talking about how she and her husband have always been pro-life. They've, it's just not even been something that they've had to think about until she was pregnant with her second kid. And in her second trimester, she miscarried, but not completely. And it was a shock to her that she couldn't go to her local hospital and get a D&C. She couldn't get, and she was looking into the camera like this was stunning to her. Like, I didn't understand what people meant when they talked about abortion care and that abortion is health care. I didn't understand that this is what they meant. So, my husband and I went out of state because she had an incomplete miscarriage, which is just a passport for sepsis and infertility down the road. And she was like, like now we no longer call ourselves pro-life. Now we understand the ramifications of this. And I think to myself, well, good for you. But if you'd have given it a little bit of thought ahead of time, maybe you would have thought about some of these things before. It's true. It drives me crazy.
We're hearing so many of those. I mean, I'm hearing so many of these stories from Republican women, formerly Republican voters, people who used to call themselves pro-life. And I think part of the reason that there is this sort of shock that they are also beholden to these laws is that Republicans have done a really good job for a long time pretending that there will be exceptions to the rule.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
And sort of lying about people's ability to get care if you really need it and if you're one of the good ones, right? If this is a wanted pregnancy, if you're married, like, you're going to be okay. But of course we know that's not true, right? These laws impact everyone. It was never going to be true. And so I think it has been a rude awakening for quite a lot of people. And that's another reason why I think this will have such an impact.
I'm talking to Jessica Valenti. Her new book is Abortion, Our Bodies, Their Lies, and the Truths We Use to Win. We are going to take a real quick break. We're going to be back with more War on Women after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm joined by Jessica Valenti. She has a Substack on abortion that you should be subscribing to. She has a book out on abortion, and but it's not her only book. It's one of 7 books that she's written. And if you don't mind, Jessica, I'd like to talk a little bit about your book, Yes Means Yes, Visions of Female Sexual Power and a World Without Rape. Talk about the premise of that, if you would, please.
Sure. Oh my goodness, an oldie but a goodie. Yes Means Yes is an anthology that I co-edited with a wonderful woman named Jacqueline Friedman. It's a collection of essays about rethinking and reclaiming sort of the way that we talk about sexual consent. I'm actually quite proud of that book and that collection of essays, because Yes Means Yes and the book and the popularity of the ideas in the book, like enthusiastic consent, led to legislation of the same name and policies of the same name. Yes Means Yes has become sort of the gold standard of sexual consent since the book came out. So it's something I'm, incredibly proud of. And I think, unfortunately, it's all too relevant these days, especially with everything that is happening with abortion rights. It's all very connected when you're talking about control of women's bodies, the way that women's bodies are policed. It's all connected.
And that's what I talk about on this radio show. Whether or not you have a religion that says don't ever get an abortion, fine. Follow the tenets of your religion. You can have a range of opinion on when, if ever, abortion is appropriate, should be allowed, under what circumstances. But it's a larger issue than that. It was Kamala Harris who asked Brett Kavanaugh if he was familiar with any laws on the books that regulated a man's health? Laws, like before a man gets a vasectomy, he doesn't have to watch a video. He doesn't have to have an ultrasound. He doesn't have to see pictures of babies, what they would look like if he ever did decide to have children. When you turn it around, it becomes so ridiculous, because the bottom line is this is about control. This is about a kind of control that people, especially men, are comfortable exerting over women, a kind of control they would never accept on themselves. And that, I think, is what sometimes gets lost in these arguments. What do you think?
Absolutely. No, I think that that's exactly right. And I think it's incredibly important that we talk about abortion rights in that way. Because it does get lost. And that's one of the reasons that we're seeing attacks on birth control, for example, right? I'll hear from people a lot, well, I don't understand. Why would they attack birth control if they're trying to reduce the number of abortions? And I sort of have to explain, this is not really about reducing the number of abortions. This is about forced pregnancy. It's about control of women's bodies. It's about erasing women from the public sphere and pushing them back into the home. And what better way to do that than ensuring that women are forever pregnant? Right? It is very, very much about control and about sort of reasserting these traditional gender norms and gender binaries. And you can't understand abortion rights without understanding that as the most fundamental piece of it.
And I think there's a class issue here as well, because famously, especially if you were white, but if were a wealthy woman, there was always a way for you or your daughter to take care of a problem. We won't talk about it. We'll just, we'll take care of the problem. When they passed these laws, I like to say they didn't outlaw abortion. Abortion isn't going to go away. What they have done is they've made it a lot harder for poor women, for women of color to get safe abortions, safe gender health care. That's what they've done. There's not suddenly no abortion in this country. They've just made it harder, more expensive, more difficult, and more fraught with emotion.
Yeah, and the truth is that the abortion numbers have gone up. There was just a study released, I think it was earlier this week, from a project called We Count that found that the number of abortions has increased nationally by 12%. And that's because people are absolutely getting the abortions that they want and need. In large part, that's thanks to telehealth and people in anti-abortion states getting abortion medication shipped to them from pro-choice states. But yes, as you said, there will always be abortions. And I think, the other important thing to realize is that, yes, it is absolutely true that the people who will be most impacted, the people who are dying, the people who are being the most hurt, are folks from the most marginalized groups. But I think it's important to remember that these laws right now, your privilege cannot entirely protect you, right? Like, we are seeing stories of middle class, upper middle class white women with incomplete miscarriages, unable to get the care they need. Even if they can afford a plane out of the state, it's too dangerous. So so your privilege can protect you to a certain extent, but not entirely. And I think it's so important that everyone recognize that these laws will impact everyone, and they have been.
I know that paid subscribers to your Substack, which again is called Abortion Every Day, that you're going to be doing like a live chat. What is it?
Yeah.
How would you describe it?
Well, we do a couple of different things. Tomorrow, Kamala Harris is giving a speech on abortion in Texas, and so we'll be hosting a live chat, sort of in the same way that you would like text with a group chat with friends to sort of talk through that speech. And then next week, I'll be hosting a video live chat where I'll be talking about the book, where paid subscribers can join in and ask questions and chat with me. It's just, it's a nice way to be a part of a community of people who cares about this issue. I think it's easy to feel alone in this. We are the vast majority, pro-choicers are the vast majority of the country, but the things that are happening are so horrible. It's so tragic. It's so distressing that finding community with people, finding people to talk to, having that outlet, I think it's been a lifesaver.
I recently went to the library and got the book that was written about the Janes. This was the movement of women, regular women from everyday life who came together to provide safe abortions before it was legal. And the woman who wrote the book has done an updated preface. Obviously, since she wrote the book, abortion became legal, and then in many places became illegal again. And she said that if there's one thing to take away from the book, it's that ordinary women can do extraordinary things. You don't have to be in the Senate like Tammy Duckworth. You don't have to be famous like Jessica Valenti and have a lot of subscribers. These were everyday women who came together to guide women who wanted abortions through the process as safely as they possibly could. And I didn't realize this till I reread this, but when the Janes, which is what they called themselves, because people would say, I'm looking for Jane, that was the code word. When they first got together, these were ordinary women. They taught themselves how to do abortions. Yeah. Because I know that there have always been doctors involved who would donate their services, but in place where there wasn't a physician, everyday women would learn how to do abortions and do them safe without any dangers of infection and in a way that was as comforting as could be to the woman. I mean, it's just amazing what everyday women can do when they come together.
And that's what's happening now. I think, if you look at what's happening on the local level with abortion funds, with abortion navigators, people who are helping patients logistically to get out of the state or to raise money so that they can get out of the state, that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing just a tremendous sort of army of volunteers, people who care about this issue, people who are, willing to do what it takes to make it happen. And I think there's probably some people who are still, getting trained on how to perform abortions, but abortion medication has really been a game changer as well, right? Yeah. Because this is something that folks can ship. You can mail it out to anti-abortion states. And so self-managing an abortion has become very, very different than it was pre-Roe. Yeah.
And thank God for that. And that's why so many states are trying to figure out how to come for mifepristone.
Exactly.
It's what are the issues or what are the candidates? Give us somebody or something you've been paying particular attention to recently.
Oh my gosh, that's so hard because I'm trying to pay attention to everything.
I know, everything everywhere all at once.
It's so difficult because it really is all important. I think every race, down to the most local thing you can possibly imagine, down to hospital boards, school boards, it all matters. It all impacts this issue. Obviously, I'm paying close attention to all of the ballot measure races, especially because of sort of the preemptive attacks on democracy that we've seen from Republicans in a lot of these states. I've been covering Florida pretty closely because Ron DeSantis has launched really an all-out attack on Amendment 4, the pro-choice ballot measure down there, down to sending threatening letters to television stations for running ads for Amendment 4, threatening them with criminal charges if they don't remove those ads.
And I love the fact that the lawyer who was charged with sending out those letters quit rather than continuing to do it.
Exactly. I mean, anyone with common sense can see what's happening, and they are willing to dismantle democracy in order to keep abortion banned because they know that voters overwhelmingly want abortion to be legal. They know how much voters care about this issue, but they don't care what voters want. They want to exert that control. They want to have that power, and they're willing to do anything that they have to in order to keep folks from restoring or protecting abortion rights. And so I'm really interested to see what happens with all of those ballot measures, not just on Election Day, but afterwards, right?
Yes.
If Florida's Amendment 4 wins, I want to know what kind of legal challenges are they going to try to bring against it, because we know that they are going to, and we've seen it happen in, Ohio, Michigan, anywhere where abortion rights becomes protected, Republicans immediately go in to try to chip away whatever they can. So it really is just so incredibly vital that we're paying attention, not just to what's happening in our own communities, but what's happening across the country, because oftentimes what's happening in another state, what's happening in another community can give you a sense of what's coming next to your community and to your state, right? Like they really are exporting these tactics all over the place.
Absolutely. Jessica Valenti, her book is Abortion, Our Bodies, Their Lies, and the Truths We Use to Win. Her Substack is Abortion Every Day. Jessica, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.